Welcome to Loup TV. I'm Gene along with Andrew and Doug for Monday, March 7th. Our three topics today are the overall market weakness, second, Apple and its ambitions in sports, and third is cryptocurrencies, getting a little bit more framework around it related to the Biden administration. And we'll go to Doug for the top here is that the market, Nasdaq is something that we pay a little bit more attention to given our more tech heavy approach. And it's down, we're going to round up here and call it down 4% for the day. That's after the past 4 weeks being down. And when we were talking about it more broadly, I was still fixated on the headlines about what is going on in Ukraine. And you had a little bit of different take. You're not the only person to have this take, but just from a highest perspective, what do you think the market is thinking about today?
Yeah, first of all, I think anybody who thinks they can accurately describe why the market is doing something in any given day is crazy because there's so many participants. We have no idea why the market is doing what it's doing in any given day. What I do think people in the market are factoring in more now than they were before is probably the risk of recession. And I think when you put together the effect really of the war on energy prices, in particular gas, I think people are sort of playing that forward. And in the past, there have been some examples of high gas prices sort of being a leading factor to recession, because obviously when people have to spend more on energy, a commodity, they have less money to then go and spend on other things that they might want to buy on a discretionary basis. And so think about what that means from a downstream perspective. You spend more on gas, you have to still transport yourself and travel and go and do things in your vehicle. But then you have less money to spend on, whatever you're buying on Amazon or buying at the grocery store or the clothes that you might want to buy. And so eventually that could mean companies start to miss earnings. And then obviously that's bad for the market. And I think what participants in the market are thinking about is what if that is the case kind of going forward?
Mm-hmm. I'm remembering 2008, 2009 timeframe. I was an analyst covering Apple, was meeting with what will be a well-known, but I will keep them unnamed asset manager with a well-known portfolio manager. And the portfolio manager was asking me what the trends in Apple's business were in that quarter. And I reassured him that the outlook was fine based on our channel checks. Demand for the assorted Apple products was doing well, and he proceeded to lecture me correctly that it's not about what's happening right now. The market is telling us that something is going to happen in 3 and 6 months from now. And rest assured, Gene Munster, that Apple will be missing its numbers in a few quarters. He got up in the middle of the meeting and walked out. He had 2 lieutenants in the meeting that were a little bit dumbfounded. I never have anybody get up and walk out of a meeting. And he, in the end, was right. And I think that there are some riffs, some contours of what we're seeing today that remind me that, yes, companies are having great quarters now, but I could see 6 months from now, those quarters not being as good. And Doug, you're not crazy. You're wicked smart. So no need to worry on that front. We're going to jump to Andrew for the next topic, which is related to Apple and content. There's a rumor over the weekend that Apple will be bidding on some of the NFL streaming content. There's also NFL Sunday Pass, and there is also an NFL media conglomerate that they potentially could bid in. As a reminder, Amazon is doing Thursday Night Football. They did that last year. They got, I think it's a 10-year deal at about $1 billion per year. You can do the numbers. I think they have 12 Thursday night games. It's a very expensive product. Amazon's going to spend about $15 billion in content this year. Netflix about $20 billion. Apple's rumored to be spending just under $10 billion. So when we put all that together, Andrew, and you think about if you want to show up to the table and play in sports, and want to also outline that Apple has really not done much in sports. They've aggregated other sporting networks within Apple TV, but they really haven't done any exclusive content in sports. When you put all those forces together, Andrew, do you think it's going to happen? Just having fun with this. Do you think Apple's going to do some deal in the NFL?
I think Apple definitely wants to explore live sports. There are rumors of Apple getting involved with MLB streaming in some way. That would make a lot of sense, probably more sense than the NFL, just because of a smaller price tag. But Apple's done so well with content. We've seen they got nominated for Best Picture award at the upcoming Oscars. But they haven't done live sports yet. That's been the missing piece to the puzzle on Apple TV Plus. So it does make sense to me that they would be exploring this option. I wouldn't be too surprised if it happened. I think it still is unlikely. So to answer your question, no, I don't think it will happen. But I do think Apple's exploring live sports, and whether it's baseball or football or Formula One, I think live sports are going to eventually come to Apple TV Plus in the coming years.
Of those three, if you said NFL, probably not. Let's pick one, in MLB or Formula One. Which one do you think will happen in the next couple of years?
MLB, I would say, would make the most sense. I haven't heard rumors of discussions on Formula One, so I'll put the rumors on MLB slightly above the rest.
What form does it take? Is there Thursday night Major League Baseball?
There are special games on certain nights. For example, Monday Night Baseball is one where they schedule special games and then they sell rights to those games. Yeah.
And people still watch Major League Baseball, correct?
They do.
How much do they watch it?
I wish I could give you I wish I could quantify viewership for each of the leagues, but baseball is underestimated.
I think it's something like NFL is at the top, and then baseball and basketball are pretty close. NBA, MLB, I think they're pretty close. I don't know the exact numbers too, but it's still much more formidable than what I realize. It's a massive property. It makes sense that Apple wants to put a dent in that. Thank you.
I can give you a little perspective there in terms of revenues. I don't know about viewership, but in terms of revenues, it's NFL, NBA, MLB. MLB has twice as many games as the NBA.
And hockey.
Gotcha.
So there's.
I forgot about there's hockey too.
Yep.
Toughest athletes in sports, hockey players. I'm biased. And that great way to bring you back into the conversation, Doug, to our final topic, which is around crypto. The Biden administration I'm not going to get the language quite right, is talking about a task force or some sort of group that's going to start to put better rails on cryptocurrencies. I read the headlines. I thought, I have no idea what that means.
Well, yeah, the basic idea is Biden has been working on some sort of an executive order, and what they are intending to do is figure out how the various branches of the government right now are sort of viewing crypto. And I think part of the problem with crypto and regulation is it's never really been clear whose sort of jurisdiction crypto falls under and what parts of crypto or potential elements of crypto might fall under one versus the other. I know the CFTC has suggested, because there's already a active futures trading market in Bitcoin in particular, that they do already regulate, that they may be the right party to sort of regulate spot, which would be if you just buy Bitcoin, on Coinbase or something like that. And so the outcome of this executive order from Biden hopefully will sort of shed some light in terms of how all of these agencies will work together, and then ultimately lead to a more cohesive sort of uniform policy for crypto. I think one last thought on that, that I think you could kind of go one way or the other with, is bears on crypto, I think, probably think that regulation is bad, full stop. Bulls on crypto think that regulation gives more clarity and is actually positive for crypto. And so depending on which side of the aisle or of the argument you kind of fall on, you probably think one or the other. I think that it's probably more bullish when you get more certainty about what is and isn't legal, particularly for the really big companies, not the companies that are under the radar who don't care about the laws to begin with, but the Coinbases of the world. Policy does help them because they're big enough and they have enough resources to go out and follow the laws and build products that are in accordance with the laws that serve users better. So I think it's a net positive for the big companies.
And Coinbase is a holding for Loup. When we think about the putting some framework infrastructure around crypto, I think about the strength of the US dollar and government agencies helping strengthen crypto, call it regulate, call it strengthen. Is that ultimately a challenge to the strength of the dollar?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think as long as you still have to pay taxes and fiat, I think there's a pretty simple argument that there will always be a place for fiat. And I mean, the reality is fiat is better for a lot of things. You know, if you're just buying normal, groceries or goods and most commerce still, fiat's better. I mean, I think unless you're a true crypto zealot, it's hard not to say that. But I think crypto has another role, which is it's become this sort of religious currency. I think in some elements, it's an identity currency. And that does matter as we live our lives more and more in the digital realm first. What you might transfer with your friends or how you might pay for goods becomes part of your identity. And I think that's the longer term play on crypto. But I don't think that this is about, threatening or protecting fiat. I think it's purely about regulating, what is and isn't allowed within the crypto industry itself.
Makes sense. And speaking of Coinbase, they had stripped away, I think, 25,000 accounts that were Russian-based accounts here for, quote, illicit activity. What is illicit activity on Coinbase?
It's probably something to do with money laundering or, disregarding the sanctions that the U.S. has put on Russia and certain
So
Russian
somebody
nationals.
has a bunch of US dollars in a bank account in London. They go to Coinbase, they get it pushed into crypto, and then they circulate it back someplace else where it's hidden. That's the basic idea.
Right. Or, yeah. If they just have rubles, right. And they're worried about the currency falling, just trying to protect their assets that for some of the billionaires, some of the Russian oligarchs, they have been specifically sanctioned. So I think it could even be,
I
to
bet
that
those
level.
people have more of their wealth in dollars than rubles,
Yeah,
especially
well,
after
for
the
their
past
sake,
week.
yeah. I would hope for their sake. But I think the thing with Coinbase that's really difficult, and I think this is true for all these companies that are deciding how should they handle Russia, but Coinbase in particular, crypto has this sort of founding philosophy around sort of freedom. And Coinbase stepping in and saying, we are going to essentially freeze certain accounts that have been identified as engaging in illicit activity. I think it's probably the right move net, but it's also a little bit of a more dangerous move for them versus like an Apple, for example, because of that idea of, crypto supposed to be representing freedom. And I think that people who are true, crypto believers would say this is the danger of centralized storage of your assets, that if the central authority says, hey, you're breaking the law, I'm going to stop you from using your assets, this is what can happen. And so, they can go to decentralized platforms. There's plenty of those out there. And I'm sure that there are people in Russia that use those platforms that will not be able to be, sanctioned or stopped. But for most people, I think, they'll say, look, I'm probably never going to have enough assets that the government will ever come after me. And, hopefully Coinbase never has to make other really hard decisions like this about what they will or won't allow on their platform, because the more they do this, I think the more they do ultimately harm their brand around trust with users.
Got it. Makes a ton of sense, especially when that trust is based on a religious and identity belief. I still don't use crypto. I do have crypto religion. I don't know if that's possible. Can I believe in crypto but not have ever used it?
Probably most people that own crypto would tell you no. You got to get on.
Okay.
You got to get
All
on
right.
board.
Then I do not have
crypto.
I'm not properly indoctrinated.
You're not
Faith
part of the
without
religion.
deeds is dead.
That's right.
That's part of
Faith
the
without
deal. You
deeds
have
is
to own
dead.
it. That's what gives it value.
Understand. On that note, I'm going to contemplate that. No promises here, but we'll promise we'll be back tomorrow. On behalf of Andrew, Doug, and Loup TV. Bye for now.